Jade first noticed the elevator at the end of a dimly lit corridor, hidden behind scaffolding and a battered out-of-order sign. The building itself had once been a thriving apartment complex, then a defunct office tower, and now was abandoned to the city's ghosts and myths. Still, Jade felt drawn to the place. She had come here chasing rumors of a supernatural phenomenon, an elevator that never reached the same floor twice. She believed it to be the stuff of cryptic urban legends, something told by hushed voices to frighten novices dabbling in paranormal exploration. Yet, the whispered stories led her here. A sense of dread clung to the stale air. Water stains dripped down the walls in jagged shapes that resembled creeping shadows, and fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. At the end of her search, she found that battered steel elevator. Its gates were slightly ajar, as if it had been left waiting for her. Contradicting all sense, Jade felt compelled to pull back the accordion-style doors and step inside. A single battered control panel greeted her, some of the buttons missing or jammed in place. The overhead light in the cab flickered. She ran a finger across the panel where sticky grime had built up in the corners. She could see no immediate evidence that the elevator worked, but on a whim, she pressed a button marked 5, the only button that wasn't worn into illegibility. Without a hint of protest from old machinery, the doors shuttered closed, and the elevator jolted to life. As it ascended, the overhead light grew brighter, almost painfully so, bathing the cramped interior in a bluish-white glare. Jade heard the hum of cables stretching. The ride was unsettlingly smooth. It felt like rising on a ghostly current of air rather than mechanical rails. Then, without warning, the elevator lurched to a stop and the doors creaked open. A wave of frigid air rushed in. Expecting to see a corridor or a lobby, Jade instead found herself gazing upon a massive ballroom frozen in time. She stepped out tentatively, only partially aware that her footfalls echoed in the hush. An elegant chandelier dangled high above, dripping with frost. The walls were lined with mirrors half ridden with black tarnish. A hush so pure she could hear her own heartbeat accompanied her tentative exploration. In the center of the floor, a group of apparitions glided in a waltz. Their gowns and tuxedos glimmered with an otherworldly sheen, as though drawn in silver pencil upon a dark canvas. Jade's heart raced. She could not tell if they noticed her, or if they even knew they were dead. As she watched, 2 dancers twirled too vigorously, and one's foot caught on something intangible. They collided, shattering the hush with thunderous resounding steps and a spectral shriek. In that moment, all eyes turned to Jade. Her presence was a disruption to their eternal dance. A wave of cold dread swept over her and she backed away toward the open elevator. Yet the dancers advanced in ghostly unison. She fumbled for the closed door button, found it, and slammed her hand onto the panel. Each press felt like it took an eternity before the doors slid shut. A last glimpse of the ballroom revealed the swirling specters drifting closer, arms outstretched as though to invite her into their silent dance. Then, darkness. The lights flickered again as the elevator continued its journey. Jade's breathing came in ragged gasps. She tried once or twice to press the ground floor button 1 that seemed newly illuminated, but it refused to respond. Instead, the elevator moved on, unstoppable, as though it sensed her small rebellions and ignored them. When it next halted, the doors opened into a cramped, dusty library. It was a chaotic warren of towering bookshelves pressed so close together that Jade could barely fit between them. She tentatively stepped forward, half terrified, half thrilled at what she might uncover. The stale smell of old paper and decaying leather drifted into her lungs. A few steps in, she noticed a desk hidden deep in the gloom, a broad reading table scattered with loose pages. Despite the oppressive silence, she heard whispers drifting from an unseen corner, as if hurried discussions were taking place just out of sight. As she neared the desk, she caught sight of figures moving behind the bookshelves, shadows morphing and bending with each flicker of the sickly green lamps perched on tall stands. The whispering rose in volume. Jade heard fragments of words. Not safe. The gateway. She's arrived. All too faint to be certain. The temperature in the library hovered just above freezing, matching the icy tension building in her chest. Then, one of the shadows detached from the shelves and stepped into the lamplight, an older man in a tattered suit. His face was pale as chalk, lips bloodless. He held a large tome in his hands, the cover carved with symbols she didn't recognize. "You shouldn't be here," he hissed, glancing down at the open pages. "It searches for souls. It's drawn to fear." She swallowed, feeling the dryness in her throat intensify. "Who searches? What do you mean?" But he shook his head, eyes wild with desperation. "It travels through realms. The elevator. You must escape before—" His warning was cut short by a trembling in the floor. The man glanced around in panic and then vanished behind the shelves, as though forcibly pulled away. Books toppled from the shelves, scattering old pages across Jade's feet. Before she could follow or question him again, a force seemed to blow out every lamp in the library, plunging the space into near-total darkness. Feeling her way back with trembling hands, Jade retreated to the elevator. She did not even get a chance to touch the control panel before the doors slid shut again, sweeping her into motion. Pulse hammering in her ears, she pressed her back to the elevator's wall and tried to compose herself. The man's warning repeated in her mind. Could she override this horrifying journey? Was there a pattern to the floors? Time blurred. She couldn't tell if seconds or minutes passed before the doors opened again. Stepping cautiously onto the next floor was like walking into an abandoned hospital corridor, illuminated only by flickering emergency lights. The hallway reeked of antiseptic and sorrow. Wheelchairs stood askew near open doors, and faint moans echoed somewhere in the distance. But it was not entirely abandoned, as Jade quickly realized. A nurse in a torn uniform shuffled out of the shadows. The poor woman's eyes were sunken, her face etched with an ancient grief. She appeared to be searching for something, or someone. Quickly, Jade ducked her head, intending to stay hidden in the elevator, but with a slow, deliberate turn, the nurse fixed her gaze directly on Jade. "Where is she?" the nurse croaked, limping closer. "She's so late for her treatment. I must find her before it's too late." Jade's stomach twisted. She considered stepping back, but an instinct told her that perhaps this nurse was not malicious, merely trapped. "I'm sorry," Jade whispered. "I don't know who you're looking for." "I'm not." The nurse let out a feeble sob. "They all said she wouldn't make it. They forced me to move her from bed to bed, but I never found her. I never completed my duty." Her voice grew more erratic, sounding like a tape recording warping under failing batteries. "Your face. New patient. No, weak." Then she advanced, arms twitching with unnatural spasms. Jade backed into the elevator cab, her hand slamming against the panel. The nurse's twisted features were lit momentarily by the hallway's pulsing lights. She looked more corpse than human. Before Jade's scream could fully form, the doors slid shut, blocking out the nurse's pleading cries. Heart-pounding, she sank to the floor of the elevator, hugging her knees. A wave of nausea hit her. Whatever realm the elevator trapped her inside, it felt like it fed on her rising terror. Each stop unraveled another eerie tableau of unfinished stories, restless spirits locked into conflicts they couldn't resolve. She wanted nothing more than to break free. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to block the next stop from happening, praying the dreaded machine would let her out somewhere familiar. But it resumed movement as though governed by a plan only it understood. The overhead bulb flickered, then dimmed to a faint orange glow. Jade noticed something new. In the corner of the panel, a mysterious symbol had begun glowing. It looked like a stylized silhouette of a key. Without thinking, she reached out and pressed it. A thunderous clank echoed down the shaft as the elevator groaned to a halt. The doors did not open this time, not immediately. Instead, thin ribbons of mist seeped through the cracks, swirling at her feet. Jade could hear the jangling of chains and a low whisper that reverberated through the metal walls. Then, as if in answer, the doors parted. Jade found herself gazing at a bleak city rooftop under a blood-red sky. Many of the nearby skyscrapers looked half-ruined, flickering in and out of existence like illusions. The wind was hot and carried the scent of rot. She tentatively stepped out and saw a dark shape huddled near the rooftop's edge. It wore a cloak or a robe of shadows, and as she inched closer, she realized the figure was bound in chains that rattled whenever it moved. Sensing her presence, the figure raised its head. Pale, hollow eyes met hers. "Welcome," it rasped, each word echoing with an unsettling resonance. "So, you're the one the library spirit spoke of." The occupant of the elevator of shadows. Jade shook her head, stumbling over her words. I don't want this. I just stumbled in." The chained figure tugged at its bonds, wincing in pain. "Yet you did. And now? It won't let you go unless you break the ties that bind it to the realms in between. This tower," it waved a hand toward the haunted cityscape, "it's a nexus for lost souls. The elevator belongs neither to the living nor the dead. Each stop you make, it latches onto unresolved anguish, drawing you deeper." Jade swallowed. "I just want to get out. Is there a way to bring it back to the real world?" The figure's expression softened. "A doorway can be sealed if the caretaker of the elevator is released from torment, but breaking these chains is no simple feat. They were forged by centuries of regret and guilt. You must face the energies fueling the elevator, those who are bound to it like I am, and help them find resolution. Only then can you hope to guide it back." Her stomach knotted. "But how do I help ghosts find peace? I don't even know who you are." A faint glimmer played across his face, a smile too weak to be menacing. "My name is Cyrus. Once, I was a traveler between realms. I took a journey on an elevator not unlike this one. My fear, my failure, trapped me here. But if I can be freed, the next occupant might not suffer the same fate." He bowed his head. "End my chain of regret," he whispered. As he spoke, the chains coiled around him like serpents, tightening. Jade rushed forward impulsively. She grabbed at one of the chain links. "How do I break it?" Suddenly, thunder rolled across the blood-red sky, and swirling winds whipped around them. The chain link in Jade's grasp trembled with raw energy. She was hurled backward, landing hard on the rooftop. A voice roared out of the storm, cold and malevolent. "There shall be no escape for the guilty." Cyrus, his face twisted with grief, cried out to Jade. "My guilt is that I once used the elevator's power for my own ends. I trapped others inside, all to resurrect something I had lost. You must forgive me or condemn me. Forgiveness can break the chain, but condemnation will strengthen it. Forever." Jade staggered to her feet, wind ripping at her hair, dust stinging her face. Even with the howling chaos, she felt the raw anguish in Cyrus's eyes. He had done terrible things, spurred by love, desperation, or madness. She couldn't be sure. But it was not her place to judge him as either wholly damned or wholly forgiven. Yet, here she was. She remembered the ghosts on each floor, how they were stuck repeating their final regrets. If she had the power to absolve them, was she also the arbiter of their penance? Hesitating only briefly, Jade shouted above the wind. "I can't condemn you to eternal torment no matter what you've done. If forgiveness can set you free, then you have it." She felt the sincerity burn in her chest. "Let go of your guilt. You must move on." Lightning snaked across the sky. The chains around Cyrus glowed white-hot, then shattered, link by link, disintegrating to ash at their feet. His haunted eyes widened in disbelief, but Jade saw relief etched in every crease of his face. Freed from the chain's grip, he sank to his knees, tears in his eyes. "Thank you," Cyrus whispered as his body began to fade. Before he disappeared entirely, he lifted his gaze to her. "The elevator obeys the caretaker's heart. Compassion can break the cycle. Remember that." When Cyrus vanished, The swirling winds calmed, and the stench in the air dissipated as if it had never been. Jade blinked and found herself back inside the elevator, the doors sliding closed on their own. For a moment, the overhead light was steady. She allowed herself a trembling sigh. Perhaps she had completed some portion of her task. However, the next jolt told her the journey wasn't over. The numbness in her arms receded enough for her to stand. She noticed more of the elevator's buttons were now faintly illuminated. New markings replaced the worn letters. Cryptic runes, shapes that might have been constellations, swirling around the single ground floor button. She realized that each realm she entered had a story to resolve. If she found a way to help the spirits on each stop, perhaps the elevator would finally return her to her world. Reaching out, she watched as her hand hovered over a button carved with a spiral shape. It pulsed gently, drawing her touch. Steeling her nerves, Jade pressed it. The elevator plummeted. Her stomach lurched as the light overhead flickered dangerously. Then the fall slowed, and the doors opened to an old-fashioned train station at twilight. Smoke billowed across the platform from an unseen locomotive, and the sound of distant whistles echoed off the metal rafters. Travelers in outdated fashion drifted by, suitcases in hand, but all their faces had the same vacant, sorrowful expression. Jade stepped onto the deserted platform. Lamps cast dancing shadows across the cracked tile, and ghosts flickered in and out of focus, as though locked in time. Two spectral lovers stood near the edge, locked in an embrace that never completed. A station master, transparent from the waist down, frantically checked a pocket watch he no longer possessed. Jade felt drawn to a child standing alone by a luggage cart, tears tracing pale cheeks. The child clenched a small doll to his chest, looking about as if searching for someone who would never return. Something about the child's heartbreak made Jade's own chest ache. Slowly she approached. "Hey," she said gently, "are you lost?" The boy lifted tearful eyes. "My mother said she'd be back before the train left, but the train came and took everyone away. Now I'm alone." He held up the doll. "She gave me this so I wouldn't be scared, but I'm still scared. Is she ever coming back?" Heart-twisting, Jade knelt beside him. She didn't know the words or magic to bring his mother back, but compassion guided her. "Sometimes people have to leave," she said softly. "But that doesn't mean they're gone forever. They live on in our hearts, our memories." The child sniffled, hugging the doll tightly. "My mother never got on the train. She was still in the station somewhere." Jade considered the swirling figures. The mother might be here, lost herself in regret. She took the boy's hand and led him along the platform. Station ghosts flickered around them, some oblivious, others casting mournful glances. Finally, near a corner bench, crouched a figure with a familiar silhouette. The woman's clothing matched the time frame, and she gripped a worn letter in her hands. Her haunting eyes darted across the platform, never settling on her child's face. Together, Jade and the boy approached. For a moment, the woman didn't see them. Then the little boy called, "Mama!" The mother froze, eyes brimming with tears. In that single moment, all the swirling illusions seemed to vanish, leaving only the boy and his mother. "Cheryl," she whispered. "I couldn't board the train. I wanted to come back for you. She reached out and the boy rushed into her arms. The tearful reunion was almost too painful to watch. Their forms glowed faintly, hearts unburdened of the separation that had trapped them. Jade felt a surge of warmth in her chest, a sense of rightness. Slowly, mother and son faded together, reunited at last. As they vanished, a whisper seemed to pass from them to Jade. "Thank you." Once again, Jade found herself back in the elevator, the door sliding shut. A new sense of quiet settled over her, as though a piece of the puzzle had clicked into place. She noticed on the control panel that more of the previously malfunctional buttons now glowed with that faint, otherworldly light. It seemed with each spirit she helped, the elevator's hold grew weaker. Perhaps one final stop remained before she could override it completely. Her theory was confirmed as the elevator jerked once more and soared upward, the speed almost breathtaking. Her palms sweat on the rail, but she did not let her fear overtake her. She was close to an end. Whether that end would free her or trap her, she did not know. This time, when the doors opened, Jade stepped out into a room that seemed eerily familiar. The lobby of the very building she had entered so many hours or lifetimes ago. The lights were still flickering. The walls still had the same water-stained cracks, but now a spectral version of herself stood near the entrance, back turned. Confusion and unease prickled up her spine. Had she become a ghost as well? Her phantom double turned, eyes filled with a blend of foreboding and longing. The ephemeral figure seemed to speak without sound, beckoning Jade closer. She advanced, drawn in by a sense of inevitability. When she reached a distance of mere feet, she felt an intangible boundary like a membrane between dimensions, holding them apart. In a flash of understanding, Jade recognized that her own regrets had summoned this mirrored spirit. Her life had been one of searching for the supernatural, pushing boundaries, chasing rumors. Perhaps she was no different from Cyrus or the lost souls. She needed to face the truth. Her obsession with the unknown had driven her to find the elevator. But that same obsession, if left unresolved, could trap her forever. She addressed the mirror Thuma softly. I came seeking answers, never caring for the dangers I might unleash, and I see now how fear, regret, and lost souls fed on that obsession. Her voice trembled. I'm sorry, to myself, for pushing too far and to the others I might have endangered. Her spectral counterpart softened, the tension in those ghostly eyes loosening. A swirl of energy coalesced around them both, a shimmering haze of acceptance. Release. The two images of Jade met in silent understanding, a moment of closure that neither required condemnation nor forgiveness, only recognition. Gradually, the apparition began to dissolve, each mote of light drifting away like fireflies. In a blink, Jade was back inside the elevator, and she felt something shift under her feet. The sensation of a mechanical system reawakening. Overhead, the single working light brightened into a steady white glow. The entire cab shuddered, this time with the familiar rumble of an ordinary elevator. She glanced at the control panel. The ground floor button shone more brightly than ever. Gathering her courage, she pressed it. The elevator descended, cables whirring in a normal, mundane way. When it finally halted, the doors slid aside, revealing the building's real lobby under the city's fluorescent hum. No apparitions lurked, no swirling mists seeped in. Even the battered corridor quietly waited, as if she had never left. Stepping out, Jade's legs felt unsteady, yet a sense of profound relief settled over her. She could still scarcely believe she had navigated realms beyond the living, encountering tortured spirits, unlocking a caretaker's chains, and guiding restless ghosts to peace. Looking back, she half expected the elevator to be gone, but it remained, silent, unassuming, its doors open. The ancient sign read, out of order, as though mocking the impossible journey she had taken. She was about to turn and walk away, to leave this building beyond forever. But then her hand lingered on the rusted doorframe. She thought of Cyrus's words, compassion can break the cycle. She thought of the dancer spectres, the sorrowful nurse, the frantic librarian, the grieving mother and child, and her own reflection. Countless restless souls might still remain out of sight in labyrinths of regret. Yet perhaps she had opened a path through which they could find release. Some part of her hoped the elevator's next passenger, if any, would be led not to entrapment, but to mercy. For a final moment she stared at the interior of the elevator cab. The overhead light flickered once, as if bidding farewell. She whispered softly, "Thank you, and goodbye." Then, With a resolve she never knew she possessed, Jade stepped away from the haunted corridor and emerged into the city night. Outside, the noise of passing cars and pedestrians drew her back to reality. Neon signs buzzed overhead, and the moon hung low, casting a silver glow on the cracked pavement. The booming metropolis of normal life dwarfed her experiences. She relished the warmth of the street lamp on her face, a stark contrast to the chilling floors hidden in that impossible tower. Still shaken and more aware than ever of life's fragile boundaries, Jade looked back at the building's entrance one last time. It stood there empty and silent, just another forgotten building in a city that paid it no mind. But she knew the stories it held, and she dared to hope that her intervention had eased at least some of its tormented echoes. She turned and walked away, the memory of her journey firing through her mind like staccato pulses of light and shadow. Though the final notes of fear coursed through her veins, she also felt a new sense of responsibility, a calling to honor the experiences of lost souls. The elevator might remain in that neglected corridor, attached to realms that existed side by side with the mundane world. But if it took another passenger, Jade hoped the caretaker's chains would not be so tight, that the path to peace might be easier to find. And if needed, she would be ready to return, not out of obsession, but out of compassion for whoever might next need a guiding hand to break their own chains of guilt and sorrow. At last, she disappeared into the city streets, leaving behind the building's vacant facade. Somewhere inside, an old steel elevator dozed in silence, no longer thirsting for terror. Even if other stories brewed within its walls, for now, there was calm. The realm-hopping machine, with its flickering light and ancient runes, had given Jade liberty she hadn't known she needed. She could face the mundane world, no longer burdened by the same restlessness that once drove her to chase shadows. And though she felt free, the sensation was tempered by humility. She had glimpsed the price of meddling in forces beyond mortal comprehension. But in the end, that battered old elevator proved there was hope, even in the darkest corners. Spaces between worlds, where compassion might triumph over regret, and the living could sometimes help the dead find release. Perhaps it was best left undisturbed, but deep in her heart, Jade carried a newfound resolve, a promise to approach the unknown with empathy rather than reckless curiosity, honoring the lift that had shown her secret realms and offered her the gift of awakening. In the distance, the city's lights blinked like countless eyes, revealing that the world was full of wonders, both seen and unseen. Jade breathed in the cool night air, feeling more certain than ever that she stood on a threshold of change. She would keep this experience close, letting it guide her tomorrow and every day after. And the elevator of shadows silently, patiently weaved, would wait out of view, existing between realms, ready for anyone who, knowingly or not, might step inside and begin another endless descent.